Welcome to the Learn Tarot with Moxxie podcast, where you can learn to read the tarot for yourself and for others. Here we look at the tarot from all angles, and I share the very best ways to use it to work through past trauma and create the life that you love. So join me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Learn Tarot with Moxxie podcast. It's Michelle here today. I am really excited about today's episode. We're doing something a little bit different. I have an interview for you with Lisa Jara. Lisa is a menstrual wisdom and soul-based coach. And she shares in the podcast what brought her to the field, how she helps her clients begin to tune in with their natural cycles, whether you are pre-menstrual, a woman in the midst of all of her menstruating years, or even post-menstrual. And she talks about the advantages of tracking these cycles. And this is fascinating to me. I realized after talking with her that there is a movement out there that's related to helping people learn. Again, it's kind of this self-coaching thing to get to know themselves better, to work within what their natural rhythms and their natural body thrives on. So just fascinating topic, I thought. Plus, Lisa and I collaborated on a handout that will walk you through a tarot reading for helping us flow more easily within our cycles of life, regardless of where you are, whether you're menopausal, postmenopausal. Anyway, so there is a free handout. The link will be in the show notes. And that handout has some information about doing some spreads that are in this vein, in a way to combine the best of both worlds in terms of this self-coaching and this inner wisdom that we all have, bringing the wisdom of the cards and bringing the wisdom of ourselves and the cyclical nature of life. Kind of heavy, huh? Anyway, super interesting, and I am excited to share it with you. But before we get started, a couple quick announcements. The court card course, I believe I already mentioned, is finished, ready to go. If you are one of those folks who really does not like to deal with the court cards because they intimidate you, this is the course for you. Secondly, the free reading form is on the contact form of the Moxxie website. So basically what you're doing is you are logging in, you are completing the form, but it's really important, please, that you add the question that you would like to ask, because that's going to help me sort through and choose questions that are most appropriate for the type of reading that I do. And I'm really excited because we do have our first reading coming up, probably next week or the week after. I'm not sure how things are going to shake out time-wise for us to get together, but I'm really excited. So this is going to be an opportunity for someone to have a free reading from me, an opportunity to ask one-on-one questions, and that will be done on the air. So you have the opportunity to listen to this person's questions and learn with them. The last announcement is for those of you who are new to the tarot and those of you who want to learn the card meanings in an easy way that helps you with your card reading right from the very beginning. I've put together a system, and I'm not going to get into all the details here. I won't bore you with all of that. But I have put together a system that allows people to read the tarot almost from day one. Now, keep in mind, this is not, an in-depth reading, the type that I would give or someone else, but it allows new tarot readers to get some value out of the tarot right away and learn how to read in what I think is a simple and natural way. When I first started to learn the tarot, I was really, really overwhelmed. I love to learn. I want all of the information. I want all of the bits and the pieces. And when I did that with the tarot, I overwhelmed myself. We've got the card meanings themselves. We've got the numerology. We have understanding the difference in the types of cards. We have the elements of the earth. We have astrology. We have colors. We have symbolism. We have all of these things that ideally make up our interpretation of a card. And I have put together a system that will help you address all of these individual little things when a card comes up that you're not familiar with, in a way that I think is simple, it's intuitive, and it can be used in a lot of different ways. Now, I have not tested this out with too many people, and I am looking for 4 or 5 guinea pigs who are willing to work with me to try out this system for free. What I would do is I would drop ship the package of information to you. I would ask you to do 5 readings that you probably would already be doing anyway, but just using this system of tarot reading that I would be sending you. And then complete about, 5 or 10 minute survey that will give me feedback. It's like, hey, yes, this was wonderful. It helped me out great. Or no, this really just made it more difficult, or it was more confusing. I'm looking for honest answers. I'm looking for real life feedback. So if you're interested, there is a link in the show notes, and I would greatly appreciate, like I said, 4 or 5 people jumping in, being my guinea pigs, and being the first to try out this new system to see if it's something that really is as valuable as I think it might be before I share it with everybody else. All right, sorry about all of the announcements. That was a long one, but without any further ado, let's get started on our interview with Lisa Jara, menstrual wisdom and soul-based coach. All right. Hello, everyone. I am here today with Lisa Jara. And Lisa is a menstrual wisdom specialist and a soul-based coach. And we're going to be talking today about what she does and a little bit about what I do and how we can blend the two together. Just to get a feel for what Lisa's like, I was poking around in her website earlier, and I found a quote that I absolutely loved and I wanted to share with you. And I think, Lisa, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think this sort of sums up what you're about, which is you're meant to lead a life that's honoring who you are on a soul deep level.
Yes.
So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think a big part of what's missing in our lives today is this deep, deep connection within to our own truth, to our real self, because we are so used to playing different roles all day, and there is even nothing bad about it. But we are a mother, an employee, a boss, a friend. We are playing all these roles all day long, and sometimes we get lost in the playing and
Yes.
don't remember or forget who we truly are, in a world that tries for us to be something different all the
Yes.
time. And so back to honoring who we are, who are like our bodies, our innate wisdom, and just staying connected to that in the midst of life when life is happening.
And that is so challenging.
It is.
Yeah, it really, really is. I'm with you 100%. So, can you explain a little bit more because I don't fully understand the term the menstrual wisdom part of things. So, can you share a little bit about that?
Of course. So why I chose it in the first place, somebody termed me a menstrual health specialist, and I was like, "Ah, menstrual health. That sounds so clinical,"
It
and that's
does.
not what it is about. Our cycles are so much more. I mean, they are a big part of our health, but they are so much more than that. They connect us to this deep truth that we have already talked to. They connect us with our soul, with our purpose, why we are here on earth. And when I speak of cycles, I mean, all beings are cyclical beings. There are just beings with different kinds of cycles. So if you're more testosterone based, then it's more a 24-hour cycle. And if you are estrogen dominant, then it's more of a monthly cycle or monthly cycle, so to speak. And for me, menstrual wisdom like ties into all phases, all cycles of our lives. So once we become like we start menstruating or bleeding, that's like menarche is a big rite of passage.
Hmm.
And then of course becoming a mother or a parent, birthing a child, the blood, it's always about the blood, right? We start the blood, we birth through the blood, and at some point the blood will cease to be the cycle, but then we
Hmm.
still go on cycling. And that's why for me menstrual wisdom refers to postmenopause as well, because we
We're going
simply
to have to get into
change. Yeah, we will.
that.
And so because I am so yeah, I just love this whole wisdom that we already carry within. And I
Hmm.
find with clients so often that they have it in them. They come out of the session, they're like, wow, I didn't know this was inside of me, this wisdom already stored in the bones, so to speak.
Yes. So, you're teaching people to track their cycles regardless of their phase in life and regardless of their gender and all of that. And what's the purpose of this? How does it benefit us to do this?
Yeah, so yes, regardless of gender and cycle, but mainly focused on women or menstruators because of this
Okay.
monthly rhythm and just because that's the one I'm most familiar with. So
Hmm.
I feel confident sharing about that. And it's an invitation to, again, come close to yourself and closer every month, because our cycle is works according to the same seasons that we see outside of us. So we have an inner winter, which would be menstruation, or the dark moon phase if we have ceased cycling, like cycling with the blood.
Hmm.
So maybe I should start there. So I believe that once we cross over into postmenopause, we just go back to our natural rhythm, the blueprint cycle, which is the moon cycle, at least for women and menstruators. So that's why many people in my sphere keep on tracking or even start charting when they've already crossed over. And this is the same when you don't have a uterus, for example, and you are a woman. Then you can still go with the moon. And I love that we always have this. Or when you're pregnant or breastfeeding and you don't have a cycle for that reason, then you can always go with the moon. And that's just so beautiful.
Right, definitely. Oh, interesting. So what you do really spans one's entire life.
It does. And it's especially like I am. I sometimes say I'm a coach for life crises because I love these moments, these rites of passage that we have where like nothing may make sense anymore. We are
Hmm.
lost completely. And then I support people both trust their inner wisdom because there is wisdom. We all know how to navigate this
Hmm.
unknown, but we have forgotten or we haven't even been taught in the first place because the unknown is obviously something that our brains are afraid of. So we try to avoid being in
It's
the
scary,
unknown. Of course, it is.
right?
And when we know how to, because as a menstruator or as a woman, we move through a death and rebirth process every single month.
Hmm.
And the closer we are to that, and the more we know how to move through that cycle every month, the easier it will be to go through these bigger cycles and transitions as well. That's why like I combine the two, and I find that the biggest rites of passage in a woman's or menstruator's lives is menarche, motherhood, definitely, maybe even children leaving the house, so empty nest,
Yes. Yep.
menopause, definitely, and everything between and beyond.
Very cool. Very cool. How did you get into this? How did you become the expert in this?
Um, it's definitely part of my own story. So, for one, I was at this point where nothing in my life made sense anymore. I have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and anorexia. And by now, I don't physically do anything with the anorexia anymore, but the thoughts are still very much present.
Sure.
And there was a point in my life where I was like, do I really want to keep on living like this for the next 40 years? Because I was 30 at the time, like at least 40 years. I mean, I don't know how old I can get. And I was like, no way am I going to live this life that feels so empty and meaningless. And so that was the moment when I started to realize how much power I actually have, started investing in myself and really believing that my health is more important than money, for example. And with health, I mean all aspects, like my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health. And I came back in touch with my own spiritual nature. I'm very woo actually, but I had to hide that in a family that didn't believe in woo or that made fun of people who
Yes.
came out of the closet with that. And then at about the same time, I read a book called Goddess Wisdom. And it opened my eyes to the fact that the world we live in, the society we live in, the structures we live in are set up to cut us off from our power because our cycle ultimately is our biggest ally and biggest source of power. It's connected to our creative cycle and everything, really. And we have been taught to fear it, to be ashamed of our blood, to
Hmm.
fear our own power. And once I woke up, well, I couldn't go back to sleep. And I now have to teach everybody or tell everybody that I meet about this, like all of it, that we are so powerful and like more than we could ever believe because we create our own world with our thoughts.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredible.
It really is that your story resonates so much. Mine is different catalysts,
Mm,
but similar situation. I was just so depressed and beyond myself, and ended up quitting corporate. Just boom, because
mhm,
same thing. I couldn't do it anymore. I wasn't being authentic to myself, and that
mhm,
was slowly sucking the lifeblood out of me. It was weird.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, I think for a lot of people, there's this catalyst or hallelujah moment, where you figure out it's like, wow,
mhm.
I don't have to live like this anymore. How is it that I thought I
Yeah.
did for all those years?
Yeah, and I believe that like menstruation or dark moon. So if you've crossed the threshold and you don't have a blood cycle anymore, the dark moon would be the equivalent. So once a month, we go to this place where we are the closest to ourselves, because in that time we are connected to our truth. We are often very inward. And even the phase before, like the premenstrual phase or the waning moon phase, like our inner autumn, is our truth speaking time. So we get in touch with our truth. And I believe that many women and menstruators, they suffer from these PMS symptoms and mood swings and all of that, because their system understands that they are not living like a life true to themselves. And the body's way to show us is these symptoms. It has no other chance. And we need to start listening. And once we start listening, the symptoms decrease. It's so fascinating.
It is, but what I struggle with when we talk about trying to share what we have learned through our own experiences and the tools that we use and whatnot, I struggle with this. I lost my train of thought. I'm in that post phase, by the way. I'm just fascinated by this because when we talked earlier, Lisa interviewed me for her podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I didn't have a chance to ask her all of these good questions. So this is really interesting to me. And I really enjoy talking to people who have been through the same experience. And so my question, there it is, that's my question. How do we as teachers empower or help people move to a space where they recognize their own power and can take that on without a
And
crisis? Do you know what I'm
mm,
saying? It's like, wouldn't it be nice to save people before they get to that point?
yeah, and I know that there are people who don't have to get to that point, and also some people have to get to that point. I'm like, I'm not sorry that I had to get to that low point, because it's okay. It made me the person I am today. And about the empowering piece, like I have a hard time with this word that is often
Mhm.
used, because, like, I, for example, I can't empower anybody because I believe the power is already in them. So,
Right.
like, it's, and I worked in a feminist women's rights organization, and they had a very good example of how you can describe this to someone. Is then, for example, there is a wall, and behind that wall, there is something really amazing you want to have a look at. And so, yes, of course, somebody can put a chair there and help me up and look over that wall.
Mhm.
But what true empowerment is, when I feel empowered, I know that I have every right to take that chair and put it in front of the wall and climb on it and look over it. So there is basically no one else involved. I give my own self permission. And I think that's even harder, because we want to help people understand
Yeah.
how powerful they are, and we have to find ways how to not interfere with them actually taking the power themselves, or
Yes.
reclaim it. And like one important thing I believe is being comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Oh, yes.
Because, like, sometimes, also in my coaching sessions, I have to be comfortable with seeing my client struggle, fully trusting that they will find the solution, with a
Mhm.
bit of space holding and a few questions, trusting that they will find their own solution that works uniquely for them.
Right.
Like, they know something because the whole system has so much more information that I from the outside could ever have, that they can come up with this perfect solution my brain couldn't even think of. And so that's actually
Right.
really satisfying and relieving as a coach, to not be responsible, to just knowing how to guide this process so that they
Mhm.
understand their own answers.
Right. I love that. Lisa had emailed me earlier and talked a little bit about her interpretation of the word empowerment, and I love that. It's funny because it's become such a catchword.
Mhm.
It's bandied about, and I think a lot of time we don't really think about the difference in us trying to act on someone and make them be empowered versus them realizing at their core that they are powerful, that they don't have to ask anyone for permission to be who they are. So explain a little bit about the cycles, I guess. Because I always think, well, there's, before one starts to bleed and then there's after.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, a little bit ignorant about that.
Well, and I mean, no wonder. As I said, we are not taught this, and until like 5 years ago, I didn't know a thing about that either. So, I'm always happy to share more about this. And most people can easily relate to the outer seasons, and so the
Hmm.
inner winter would be our menstruation, or if we are post menopause, then it's dark moon. So basically, the moment when the moon is not visible in the sky at all.
Hmm.
Which is usually a phase where we are, like nature, drawn inwards,
Hmm.
resting. Usually, we have a tendency to rest more. We are more reflective, um, and also connected to our truth. And
Hmm.
then, like in spring, when the bleed is over, so it varies, of course, from body to body. That's why people have to chart their own cycle.
Right.
But we at some point we can feel the energy returning. So like in spring, sap is rising, we become more active again, we may have lots of new ideas and plans what we want to do this cycle. We can also be a little overwhelmed by all of that, and especially when in our own childhood there have been some traumatic experiences, then
Hmm.
this phase can be challenging because it brings out our inner child. And when our inner child isn't taken care of, when we don't know how to take good care of our inner child to make it feel safe or help it feel safe,
Right.
then this phase can bring up a lot of anxiety and nervousness. And then we move into inner summer, which is ovulation or the full moon phase, where we are usually more outward, like to be out and about with people. We have usually a lot of energy. So basically, we can do it all for a few
Hmm.
days, for a few days only.
Right, exactly.
And then at some point comes the inner autumn, and we start moving back inwards, turning back inwards again. And I would even um, split that in two phases. So the early autumn and the late autumn. The early autumn can often be, so it's basically short after ovulation. And that can often be a time where we are creative or where things are ripening in our life. And then the late autumn would be the premenstrual, so the few days before menstruation or the few days before dark moon, where we, again, as I said, we have this truth speaking ability. We might not consciously, but definitely subconsciously
Help.
understand that there might be some areas in our life where things are not the way we want them to be, and we have a chance to address them. If we understand how to get in touch with our inner critical voices, because they are usually very prone to come out at that time.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. And then we move back into the winter of menstruation. But the autumn is also a good place to be reflecting on, like, what went well this past cycle, what didn't go so well, which lessons do I want to take into the next cycle, and then have this fallow period in winter. And like this is for me a coming closer and closer to myself. It's a practice. It's not something that's written in stone. Every cycle can be different, like every spring is different,
Hmm.
even if it's spring. And the charting, I love to speak about cycle charting because it means it's uncharted territory. Like I said before, the unknown, it's
Hmm.
something that's not written in stone, and so we can learn how to be with it and chart it, knowing that next cycle will be different. So we have again this maybe a little bit of curiosity to see, okay, what's it like? And while, like, many people speak of cyclical living as, well, you eat these foods in that cycle phase, and you do that kind of
Hmm.
sports in that cycle phase, and to me that's already bringing in these rigid structures again that we so like to do, to have everything in control. And
Yes.
I invite people to be mindful of, for example, when they have lots of energy, then it's better to schedule more, like, for example, tough conversations into that phase, because you will have that energy, at least in tendency.
Hmm.
And then life might happen, and you start bleeding 2 days early or whatnot, or
Sure.
something happens. And then just be mindful and acknowledge, okay, today I'm inward. Yes, I do have an important meeting. How can I like bring this honor, this inwardness in the meeting? Can I maybe not jump in every time I want to say something, or can I start it with a minute of reflection or silence? Or you never know what other people will like, how they will benefit from you going after what's good for you.
That's true. That is true. And being an example of someone who deems themselves worthy of that.
Hmm.
Um, tell us a little bit more then about how one would chart a cycle. I mean, charting a cycle during menstruation or during your menstrual years, the years that you're bleeding, that makes perfect sense to me. I did that when I wanted to have my daughter at a particular time because I was teaching,
Hmm.
and it worked beautifully. It was amazing. So I understand charting, your menstrual cycle that way. Tell me a little bit more about how you've expanded that concept.
Well, and I first want to say I don't want to take credit for these things. They have been around, this teaching. There are so many beautiful teachers out there who do that, who teach that. And again, I believe it's wisdom that's already stored in our bones if we just dare to listen within.
Hmm.
But when you are post menopause, you would simply, that's my invitation, you could simply go with the moon phases, as I explained, dark moon, so when
Hmm.
the moon is not visible in the sky. um, and for me, so that would be day one. When you menstruate, day one is the day you start bleeding, and when you are post menopause or don't bleed, then day one is the dark moon day, and then you just
Okay.
number them consecutively from then on until the next dark moon, basically. And then each day you would note down the day, so day one, day two, day three, the phase you're in. So in a winter, in a spring, in a summer, sometimes there can be transition days. So this is not, again, it's not a science that has to make perfect sense. It's for you to get
Hmm.
to know your own body and your body's rhythm, right? So there is no right or wrong. And you would just roughly feel, okay, spring is returning. I can feel my energy returning now, something like that.
Hmm.
And three words for how you are on that day. So the
Okay.
day of your cycle, the phase you're in, and three words. And as a bonus, how can you honor this in your day, the way you are that given day? And that alone, if you do that for, say, 3 or 4 months,
Hmm.
you will start realizing certain patterns. Okay, you use similar words in the winter phase. You might use similar words in the summer phase and in the ones in between. Oh, always on day 20, I have an argument with someone. So maybe around that time, I need to pay more attention and not be hard on myself, you know? These things are real. And then
Yeah.
there is so much more that you can track. Like you can track your dreams and see if you've got certain themes coming up at certain times in your cycle, and yeah, all of that. But if you want to
Okay.
start slow, start with three words.
I love that three words because I know, I'm always pushing people to journal. And
Mm.
first of all, some people don't like to write.
Hmm.
It's time consuming and it's just more than some people want to do. But to just say, okay, three words, boom, boom, boom,
Hmm.
that's a great way to ensure people continue. It's not a cumbersome process.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why
I
I say you can
understand.
always add in more later.
Right. Well, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, okay, you're tracking that. Well, you could pull a tarot card every day and track the tarot card that
Hmm.
you're pulling to see, if there is a cycle in the tarot cards or
Hmm.
a an oracle card or lots of things you could do. That's a really interesting way of looking at it. So now I'm understanding because when you were talking about older women chart, I'm like, I don't know where I would begin. How do
Hmm.
I even start?
Right.
But yeah, I can see the value in that. Absolutely.
And it's so fascinating because I have several clients who started charting at 65 and they love it, you know, and just so happy to that they now connect to their own body's rhythm. and just
Yeah.
see, oh, in which phase am I most creative? In which phase do I like to do these kinds of things? And yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. Do you do anything with astrology?
Yeah, I do definitely track the moon and in which astrological sign the moon is in, especially for dark moon, because it sets us up
Right.
for the whole month. And when you are post-menopause or you don't bleed, then that would be exactly like your kind of theme. I work with intentions according to the dark moon theme for the whole
Okay.
moon cycle.
Well, and it makes me think of someone getting an astrological reading that isn't written in stone. It's showing
Mhm.
tendencies, it's showing traits, it's showing
Mhm.
patterns. Um, this is a really nice way to complement that and expand on it.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you wanted to tell me about what it is you do and how you do it and why you do it?
Well, I definitely do it because I'm a feminist, and like I know some people can get scared or triggered when they hear this word, but what it means for me is like I want to create a world where everybody is free to be themselves, regardless of gender,
Right.
religion, sexual orientation, whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and to be more in touch with nature, with our bodies. Um, because I believe that through becoming more aware of our body cycles, starting to accept our bodies again, especially as women, especially as menstruators, because we have been judged, and like it's even society dictates what's called feminine and what
Oh, yes.
isn't. Like, what does a woman look like? What should she look like? And yeah, and we have fallen prey to this idea that we need to look a certain way or behave a certain way in order to be categorized into a certain category.
I don't know if you've been covering, probably not, the politics in the States. They're ridiculous. But there's been a conversation about what is a woman, trying to define what a
Hmm.
woman is. And it's utterly ridiculous.
It
It's
is, and
insane.
I read an article the other day in a German newsletter, and they said a woman, or like basically a woman looks like a body with a woman in it. Period. You
Exactly.
know?
With a woman in it.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. But that's hard for some people to wrap their heads around, I guess.
It is. Oh, and
You know,
like what I would love to share too is that like I'm currently training to become a women's or like a pelvic care specialist for women and menstruators. Because I find that like I want to fill this gap that I've seen that the medical professionals say, oh, endometriosis, you're incurable, or incontinence, well, use the pads or whatever. And
mhm.
this is simply BS. Like these things are not incurable, and there's so much you can do, and I will be able to support people through things like incontinence, menopausal issues, organ prolapse, infertility, endometriosis, PCOS, cysts, whatever you name it, that the medical professionals don't have time and care to go
Yes.
into.
Well, that's really interesting, and I think extremely necessary. At least here, men run still a lot of the medical system and certainly the
Hmm.
research and what deserves to be researched and what deserves to be
Hmm.
have attention paid to it.
Exactly.
And it's amazing to me how much of a difference there is in what's available for erectile dysfunction versus what's available for
Mhm.
endometriosis. It's
Absolutely. And
blows
like
my mind.
even female doctors, they, because in our society, if you want to have a certain role or status, you have to act like a man in order to
Yes,
become that. So the women or the female doctors, they might not be so sensitive either. And like I've heard things from my clients where I'm like, I can't believe they told you that.
right, right. Yeah, it's just mind-blowing. Well, and I we shouldn't get because if we get off on politics and
I
women's
know.
rights and stuff, we could be talking until forever. But thank you for doing what you're doing. It's so nice to know, and I know that anyway, but there are other people out there that, that just say you deserve this. You
Mhm.
you deserve it. It's just not even a question. Um, so I was thinking that what I would do is I'm going to put together a reading for each of the three different phases that we've talked about.
Mhm.
And what I would like you to actually look it over before I give it to everyone to make sure that we're on the same page. But that is specifically designed to help you dig in a little bit deeper into what's going on with your cycle. Is there something that you need to sit with to address? Is there something you need to release? Kind of the same thing that you're talking about already. I think it's just a different way of approaching it, or an additional way of approaching it, like you said. So
Yeah, I was just thinking that's beautifully complementing the whole thing.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's what I like about what you do is it very much mirrors how I use the tarot. It's
Mm.
about inquiry. It's about um
Curiosity.
yes, exactly. It's not about I know the answer and you don't know the answer and please tell
Mhm.
me what it is. It's about allowing someone to um, be who they're supposed to be, at their core.
Mhm.
And I really love that. So, what's up with you after your training, your pelvic specialist training? What are you going to do with that? How are you going to use that?
Well, I am already like it has already started, so I'm already incorporating that into my current
Okay.
programs. And also, I mean, it ties in perfectly with what I do already. As I shared, menstrual health or menstrual
Yep.
wisdom relates to all phases, and so I will be able to also on a physical level, because what I do is
Right.
often more psycho emotional and touching the spiritual soul level, and I
Yes.
want to bring that down to earth with some actual physical practices. Because, for example, I love therapy, but it only works to a certain extent, and then
Yes.
we need to go a level deeper. And with the coaching and the things that I will learn now, I think I have a really holistic approach to the whole picture, and will
Right.
be able
Right.
to support, because there are beautiful self massage practices. It's that again, it's not about going to the doctor and believing whatever they say, but it's about, oh, I am able to facilitate my own healing. Oh, my
Hmm.
body can do that, and I can support my body with it. And it's so easy, like simple practices. I'm all about simplicity. Our lives are complicated enough.
Right. Right. So basically, then you would be working with someone and say, "Hey, try this exercise." It could be a physical exercise. It could be. I mean, you're not prescribing things, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not allowed to. I like in Germany, I'm not even allowed to say anything with healing, that healing is
Oh.
possible, because they are very, very set on only when you've done a certain exam are you able to
Hmm.
use this terminology. Um, but what I do now, and what I've worked has worked beautifully so far with my clients, is I do the soul-based coaching, which is already just set on their innate wisdom, me guiding with a few questions, guiding them to their answers. And usually there's something that comes up, a certain theme or something, where I go like, I think this particular self-massage practice would really help you with this.
Okay.
For example, I had a client who said she has trouble connecting with the earth, feeling grounded in her life,
Right.
and was just nervous all the time, almost kind of getting out of the body, getting
Oh.
somewhere else away from the ground. And I was like, I know a really good hip massage practice that I've tried myself, of course, and it has helped me so much reconnect to my pelvic floor. Actually, it made me
Hmm.
realize how much tension I hold in my pelvic floor muscles, which explains why I have this like rigidity with the OCD and everything. um, and now I'm actively remembering every day, oh, loosen up your pelvic floor muscles, because
Right.
like the pelvic floor holds everything on top, like our whole digestive tract, all our organs, and it's usually so flexible to like kind of move with the workings of our inner organs and our digestion.
Mm-hmm.
And because when it's rigid, of course nothing moves, and I believe that now that I am more flexible in my pelvic floor, I am also more flexible in life and with thoughts and with everything.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, and so like I would include these practices just as a supportive addition to what I already do.
Right, right. So you have a toolbox that you can pull from.
I do, yes.
Yeah,
Because
that
trauma lives in the body. Our body
it
lets us know,
certainly
and so we
does.
need to address our body. And when we can do that ourselves and don't need to run to the doctors for that, how beautiful is it?
Yeah, I think the trick is getting people to fully internalize and on a gut level recognize that they have that ability. It's
Hmm.
um yeah, I had this weird little lumpy tumory thing and I'm like, I'm just
Mm.
going to meditate this thing away.
Hmm.
And 2 weeks later it was gone, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying, and it could have been some weird little cyst that was just going to pop and go away anyway, but I truly, truly believe in my body's ability to heal itself.
Yes.
And it's so easy for us to lose track of that. So anything that you're doing to help people remember to to see it in themselves again is
Mhm.
great.
Yeah, you know what? Like I think we have this colonizer mindset. We have taken on these beliefs that our bodies are things to be tamed. They are wild animals that don't behave the way we want them to behave, or they're supposed to behave. They are not
Right.
supposed to behave. They are wild creatures. We've got a wild creature body here, so let's play with it.
Yes, exactly. Take advantage of the fact that we're here in a meat suit. Who knows how long we're going to be here? You
Hmm.
know, experience it. All right. Well, is there anything else you would like to share that I haven't hit on?
I think we've covered quite a bit.
We have.
I'm definitely looking forward to this spread you referred to, because I think that's like a beautiful. I did have a sneak peek that you allowed me graciously, and I think it will go really well with the cycle charting, because it's all about how to set yourself up for the month. Like, what is going to be important for me this cycle? And then you can have it like on top, and then you do your cycle charting below, and you can always refer back to, oh, this is what's important for me this month. Am I still
Right.
connected to that?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, it's very cool how things melded together. I love that.
I know.
And where do people find you? If they wanted to reach out and speak with you, have a coaching session, what would they do?
So the best way to find out more about me and my work is definitely my website. I love receiving email. For me, email is a little bit like snail mail, and I love a good snail mail. um, so I do write a weekly soul letter in my soul mail. So if someone is inclined to learn more about cycle charting, be reminded of the different phases. Hey, now we're moving into this moon phase. I can only go with the moon, because unfortunately I cannot send to everyone's individual cycle. I would love to do
Sure.
that, but it's not
Not this week.
hasn't been invented yet. But so I go with the moon cycle and remind people, hey, this is corresponding to that phase. If you've got a menstrual cycle, so in that phase, this can come up, or it can be a good thing to pay attention to this thing. And I also share like lessons I learn in my life, or ask some coaching questions. I had my last one was for the Leo full moon, so I asked or invited people to think about the kind of leader they want to be, because believe it or not, you are a leader, the leader of your life at the very
Hmm.
least. And what
Right.
kind of leader do you want to be? um, and so you can definitely sign up for that on my website. I would love to connect there with you. If you're more like the social type, I do have an Instagram and Facebook account, um, but I'm kind of more old fashioned. I love emails. I do have a podcast myself.
Yes.
So there is something for every taste, I guess.
And what
And
is
it
the name
all
of your
centered
podcast?
on the podcast is called Spirals of Life because we're, as I described, like I see life as a spiral and we are moving through this, like not the same spiral, but we're moving in kind of circles and we're never at the exact same spot we think we are. I mean, you probably know this moment when that again. I thought I've learned better. I've learned more now. I should be in a different place. Well, you are. You're not in the exact same place you were last time you encountered the situation. You have grown. You have developed. You've evolved.
Right.
And so
Just the
it's
fact that you can recognize you're back in the same place is growth.
yeah, exactly. And it's a spiral. And like the center, as much as the center of the cycle chart, basically, when you've got all the 4 seasons in the 4 directions, the center is you. It will always lead you back to yourself. And so on that podcast, I talk about everything that I think about. It's just sharing my thoughts and what's important to me and what I think could be beneficial to people out there in relationship to walking their own cycles and spirals with more ease and confidence in themselves.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, Lisa. Well, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting it out so everybody can find out about what you're doing and how cool it is. And
Thank you. It was
yeah.
so much fun.
Well, you know what? I really enjoyed talking to you. So anytime you're looking for a podcast guest on your board, we need to get on and talk about women's rights and
Yes.
feminism and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
let's schedule that. I would love to do that.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Why don't you shoot me an email and let me know when would work for you and we can put it on the
I
calendar.
will. I
Awesome.
will.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Learn Tarot with Moxxie podcast, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps other people find us when you guys are vocal about who we are, what we are, where we are, and what we offer. Remember too, if you want to submit a question for a tarot reading, you can sign up on the Moxxie website and there will be a link in the show notes for you below. Those questions are questions that I will consider for using as example readings during podcast episodes. Of course, everything is 100% confidential. There will be no hints or tips about who you are, but it would be a way for you to get a question answered by me and share a learning experience with everyone else. So if you are interested in doing that, in that free reading, please head on over to the Moxxie website where you can sign up. And again, there will be a link in the show notes below. Remember too that the website has a ton of resources and freebies that are available to you that will help you on your tarot learning journey. And lastly, if you want to stay up on the nitty-gritty of what's going on at Moxxie, I invite you to be a free member of the Moxxie community. You just need to pop over there, sign up. I know that we don't always catch every single episode, and signing up will mean that when there is a new course announced, you will hear that. When there is a new blog post that I am particularly pleased with, I will send that as well. You have my word that I am not an over-emailer, because I really do not like over-emailing, and I don't like reading through tons and tons of emails that just seem to be sent for the sake of being sent. So I promise I will not do that to you. So those are some ways to stay connected with Moxxie and ways that I invite you to join the community. All right, you take care, have a wonderful week, be kind, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.